welcome back to Dark Cinema Recaps, where horror's for life, not just for October. Today, we have got the whole Conjuring Universe recapped up until The Nun 2. So, it's quite odd how The Nun started it as we did it in chronological order, and The Nun 2 has bookended it for us. Now, we started doing this franchise when we first started, and a couple of them are going to be with the old AI voice that we used before we started going on camera, started retelling it ourselves. So, yeah, that's why that's a thing. So the Conjuring Universe wrapped. Firstly, I want to thank everyone who supported the series. It's a couple of the videos have got like over thousands of views, which is incredible, and it's something that we've absolutely loved covering. But once that door closes, another one opens. So join us back Friday. We are going to be looking at, going to be carrying on the Evil Dead franchise with Army of Darkness. And next Tuesday, we are going to be still in the paranormal realm, because we started the Exorcist series. We're going to finish the Exorcist series. And that, up next, is Exorcist 2, Heretic.
In 1952 Romania, two nuns living at the St. Carthers Monastery are attacked by an unseen evil force after one of them entered a tunnel to retrieve an ancient Christian relic. The surviving nun, Sister Victoria, flees from the attacker, a demon appearing as a nun, and hangs herself. Her body is discovered by Frenchie, a villager who transports supplies to the nuns. The Vatican learns of the incident and summons Father Burke to Rome, where they ask him to travel with Sister Irene, a nun in her novitiate, to Romania in order to investigate the situation. While Sister Irene is teaching children the relationship between religion and science in a school, her Mother Superior interrupts her and informs her that Burke has arrived in order to request Irene's accompaniment in his trip to Romania. The pair travel to Romania and meets with Frenchie, who leads them to the abbey. They discover Victoria's body and take a key from her corpse. Inside, they encounter the abbess, who informs them that the nuns observe a period of silence during the night and offers them lodging at the attached convent if they wish to return tomorrow. Frenchie is attacked by a demon as he returns to the village, but escapes. Burke tells Irene that a boy he exorcised in the past, Daniel, was fatally injured during the ritual, and Burke has carried the burden of the boy's death. Irene reveals that as a girl, she had visions, and each of them concluded with "Mary points the way," causing the church to take an interest in her. That night, Burke is rescued by Irene after being buried alive in the graveyard by the demonic entity. The next day, Irene and Burke return to the abbey, but only Irene can enter as it is cloistered. She meets some of the other nuns and learns that they are praying constantly, swapping in shifts, to keep the entity at. Sister Juana reveals the abbey was built in the Dark Ages as a castle to be used by the Duke of St. Carter, a powerful aristocrat obsessed with the occult. The Duke summoned the demon through a rift in the catacombs but was killed by Christian knights, who sealed the rift with a vial filled with the blood of Christ. However, the bombings during World War II reopened the rift, unleashing the entity. Burke identifies the demon as Valak and discovers the abbess has been dead all along. Frenchie heads back to the abbey to help Irene and Burke. Irene is attacked by Valak and joins the nuns in desperate prayer to ward off the demon. When the group reunites, Irene discovers that none of the nuns she had seen and talked to are real and she had been praying alone. Later realizing that Sister Victoria had been the last nun in the abbey and had sacrificed herself to stop Valak from possessing her body and unleashing evil. Theorizing that Valak can only be stopped if they seal the rift with the blood of Christ contained in the reliquary, the trio retrieves the vial with the key Victoria possessed. Irene informs Burke that God has called her to make her solemn vows as a nun and asks Burke to elevate her to the status of a professed nun, which he does in the abbey's chapel. After the trio unlocks the tunnel door, Irene is lured into a pentagram and possessed by Valak. Frenchie smears some of the blood of Christ on her face, casting out the demon. Burke is wounded by Daniel's ghost as Valak starts to drown Irene in a flooded chamber. Irene expels the blood of Christ in the demon's face, banishing it as the rift is sealed. After Frenchie resuscitates Irene, he reveals his name is Morris. Unbeknownst to the others, Morris has been possessed by Valak, as evidenced by an inverted crucifix on the back of his neck. 20 years later at a university seminar in Wakefield, Massachusetts, Carolyn Perrin watches as Ed and Lorraine Warren present footage of their attempt to exorcise a possessed Morris. In the footage, Morris grabs Lorraine, giving her visions of Ed dying, causing her to scream in horror and lock herself in her bedroom for 8 days, which initiates the Warrens' investigation of the Perrin farmhouse haunting. A dollmaker named Samuel Mullins and his wife Esther grieve for the loss of their 7-year-old daughter Annabelle, nicknamed B, who dies when she accidentally steps in front of a car. 12 years later, the Mullins open their home to provide shelter for Sister Charlotte and 6 girls left homeless by the closing of their orphanage. Despite having been warned to avoid B's locked bedroom, Janice, a young orphan disabled by polio, discovers a note saying, "Find me," and sneaks into the room, which has mysteriously become unlocked. She finds a key for B's closet and opens it, where she sees an eerie porcelain doll. This unwittingly releases a powerful demon that begins to terrorize the girls. One night, the demon, taking B's form, appears to Janice, saying that it wants her soul. Although she attempts to get away using a stairlift, the demon recalls the stairlift and hurls her violently down to the ground floor, leaving her severely injured and confined to a wheelchair. Janice's best friend Linda is tormented by the demon. One morning, the demon, posing as Sister Charlotte, wheels Janice into the old barn, where, in the form of B, it attacks and possesses her after throwing up black bile directly into Janice's mouth. Linda notices changes in Janice's behavior and tells Samuel that Janice snuck into B's room and found the doll. Samuel trusts Linda. Janice, who can now walk, transforms into the demon and brutally kills Samuel, who follows her while holding a crucifix, forcing him to drop it after moving his fingers backwards one by one. Outside, Sister Charlotte hears his screams and is horrified to find him dead on the floor. Linda takes Janice's doll and throws it into the well. A strange noise comes from the well and she is almost dragged into it, but Sister Charlotte saves her. Alarmed, Sister Charlotte speaks with the disfigured Esther, who is confined to her bedroom. Esther explains that after B's death, they prayed to whatever entity would grant their wish to see their daughter again. An unknown entity answered their prayer, and though they briefly saw B's spirit, the entity convinced them to transfer its essence into one of Samuel's crafted dolls. They happily agreed, but soon realized they had attracted a demon looking for a human host. One night, Esther saw B's spirit transforming into the demon, which then gouged out her eye and resulted in her wearing a half-doll-like mask to conceal her injury and the scars. Enlisting the help of priests to bless the house, they locked the doll in B's closet. Esther and Samuel opened their house as a shelter for orphan children to repent for their actions, but Esther now regrets it since this has provided an opportunity for the demon to look for a human host. The demon murders Esther and attacks Sister Charlotte. The orphans leave the house, but Linda is trapped and hides in B's room as the possessed Janice tries to stab her. Sister Charlotte locks Janice and the doll inside the closet. The next day, police arrive to search the house and find only the doll, which they remove as evidence. Sister Charlotte, Linda, and the orphans are escorted away by officers to find another new home for the orphans, while Janice escapes through a hole in the closet wall and relocates to an orphanage in Santa Monica. Still possessed, she becomes reclusive and calls herself Annabelle. Pete and Sharon Higgins soon adopt Annabelle. 12 years later, after being involved in devil worship, a grown-up Annabelle returns home and murders her adoptive parents, awakening MIA, who warns John about Sharon Higgins' screams.
In 1956, Father Nora and young Jacques performed their daily chores in their church in Tarascon, France. While investigating a disturbance, Nora is raised into the air, set on fire and burned to death before a terrified Jacques, who then flees.
4 years following the events of St. Carthur's Monastery, Sister Irene now serves in a convent in Italy. Maurice works at a boarding school in France, where he has befriended a young Irish student named Sophie and her teacher mother, Kate. Irene has a vision of Maurice asking her to save him. She is dispatched by the Cardinal to investigate a series of deaths across Europe, attributed to the demon Valak, due to her previous experience with the demon.
She travels to Tarascon with her sister Deborah, a young novice who expresses her difficulty in accepting miracles, such as the real presence of Christ in the Eucharist. Meanwhile, a delivery girl witnesses Valak take him to a possessed Maurice before Valak kills her. In Tarascon, Irene is haunted by Valak and has a strange vision. Sister Deborah tells Irene that she received a rosary from Jacques. At school, Sophie is bullied by classmates and is locked in their deconsecrated, sealed-off chapel.
The bully points out the goat on the stained glass window, claiming that the devil appears when the sun shines through and turns the goat's eyes red. One night, the headmistress encounters a sleepwalking Maurice and is killed by Valak in the guise of her deceased son.
Irene and Deborah travel to Palais de Papa and they meet with the librarian. He explains that Valak was an angel rejected by God, and the emblem of Nored's rosary is a family crest of Saint Lucy, who was martyred by a pagan.
Though she was set on fire and miraculously did not burn, her eyes were gouged out, but her family recovered them. The librarian suggests that the demon is killing St. Lucy's descendants because it wants this powerful relic, last known to be stored in the former monastery turned winery. The winery then becomes the present-day boarding school. At the school, Irene and Deborah face off against a fully possessed Maurice. Sophie shows the women the stained glass goat in a chapel, and they use a flashlight to make the eyes glow red.
The red acts as a laser, pointing to where the eyes of St. Lucy are buried. Irene finds the relic and the stained glass goat vanishes, reappearing in real life as a demonic creature. As the goat attacks the student, Maurice attacks Irene, chases Sophie and causes the bell tower to collapse. Deborah admits that she's in over her head on this one to Irene and that she now has faith. Irene uses the relic against Maurice, but he grabs it, causing Valak to appear. Similar to Father Nora, Valak lifts Irene in the air, gives her a tickle, and sets her on fire. Irene does not burn, as Valak realizes that she has got plot armor and is a descendant of Saint Lucy, able to harness the same power associated with the relic. Irene and Deborah pray with faith. The words of the institution used in Christian celebrations of the Eucharist and the old barrels of wine in the room become the blood of Christ, banishing the demon. Well, ain't that just some fucking luck?
Oh yeah. With Valak gone, Irene and Deborah manage to free Maurice of the possession and save his life. The next morning, Irene leads Maurice outside and helps him to regain his senses. However, she becomes concerned as she watches him go with Sophie and Kate inside.
In Santa Monica, California, John Form, a doctor, presents his expectant wife MIA with a rare vintage porcelain doll as a gift for their first child to be placed in a collection of dolls in their daughter's nursery. That night, the couple is disturbed by the sounds of their next-door neighbors, the Higgins, being murdered during a home invasion. While MIA calls the police, she and John are attacked by the Higgins killers. The police arrive and shoot one killer, a man, dead, while the female killer kills herself by slitting her throat inside the nursery while holding the doll. News reports identify the assailants as the Higgins' estranged daughter, Annabelle, and her unidentified boyfriend, both members of a cult. In the days following the attack, a series of paranormal activities occur around the Forms' residence. Afterwards, MIA gives birth to a healthy baby girl. She and John name their child Leah. The family rents an apartment in Pasadena and, after finding the doll that John had discarded since Annabelle's previous attack in one of their boxes, another set of paranormal events plague MIA and her daughter. MIA calls back Detective Clarkin to gather information about Annabelle and the cultists and learns that the cult intends to summon a demonic spirit. With the help of bookseller and fellow tenant Evelyn, MIA realizes that the cult practiced devil worship, which summoned a demon who followed the family after they moved to their apartment so as to claim a soul. Upon returning home, MIA and Leah are attacked by the demon who reveals itself while manipulating the doll. MIA and John contact their parish priest, Father Perez, who informs them that demons sometimes attach themselves to inanimate objects as an advantage to accomplish their goals and that a human soul must be offered for a purpose. Without any hopes of exorcising the demon out of the doll, Father Perez decides to take it away to seek help from the Warrens for investigation. But before he can enter the church, the demon impersonating Annabelle's spirit attacks him and grabs the doll. Father Perez is hospitalized the next day, and when John checks on him, the priest warns him that after sensing its powerful presence, the demon's true intention is to claim Mia's soul. That night, while Evelyn is visiting MIA, the demon uses Father Perez's physical form to sneak into the apartment and abduct Leah for her mother's soul. To spare her daughter, MIA attempts to jump out of the window with the doll, but John arrives in time along with Evelyn to stop her. Evelyn decides to take her life in Mia's place instead as atonement for causing a car accident that resulted in the death of her daughter Ruby years ago. As Evelyn lies dead on the road, the demon and the doll disappear. MIA and John never saw or heard of the doll again, and Leah is safely inside her crib. 6 months later, the doll is bought from an antique shop by a mother as a gift for her daughter Debbie, a nursing student, and is seen stored and locked away into a glass case in the Warrens' artifact room.
In 1968, renowned demonologist Ed and Lorraine Warren are investigating the Annabelle case, in which friends Debbie and Camilla say they have a possessed doll. They explain that after they contacted the medium, they allowed the spirit, who claimed to be a 7-year-old girl named Annabelle Higgins who died in the apartment, to possess the doll. Unable to get rid of the doll as the hauntings become more disturbing, Debbie and Camilla decided to desperately reach out to the Warrens. The Warrens then explain how the doll was never really possessed and was a conduit for a demonic spirit that manipulated Debbie and Camilla so that it could eventually take over one of their bodies. 3 years later, in 1971, Roger and Carolyn Perrin move into a farmhouse in Harrisville, Rhode Island, with their 5 daughters, Andrea, Nancy, Christine, Cindy, and April. Their dog Sadie refuses to enter the house. A minor mishap during a game of hide and seek results in the discovery of a boarded up entrance to an unknown cellar. Paranormal events occur within the first few nights. Every clock in the house stops at 3:07 a.m. Carolyn awakens with additional large bruises each morning. Kinky bitch. One day, Sadie is found dead in the yard, and because John Wick doesn't exist in this universe, he can't go kick a malevolent spirit's ass. Carolyn and Christine both encounter a malevolent spirit. Carolyn contacts the Warrens, who meet with her and agree to conduct an initial investigation, during which Lorraine, a clairvoyant, sees that dark forces have latched onto the Perrin family. She explains that leaving the house will not free them. Gather evidence. They place cameras and bells around the house with the help of their assistant Drew Thomas and police officer Brad Hamilton. Further research reveals that the house once belonged to an accused witch named Bethesda Sherman, a relative to Mary Townesty, who sacrificed her week-old baby to the devil and killed herself in 1863 at 3:07 in the morning, after proclaiming her love of Satan and cursing all who take her land. There are reports of numerous murders and suicide through the years in the houses that were built on the property. One morning, Bathsheba appears to Carolyn and fully possesses her. That night, the group hears a spirit luring Cindy into the wardrobe, where she reveals a secret passage. Lorraine enters the passage and falls down the cellar, where she sees the spirit of the woman who Bathsheba had possessed long ago and used to kill her child. Bathsheba attacks Nancy. The incident is caught on camera. The Warrens conclude there is sufficient evidence to receive authorization from the Catholic Church to perform an exorcism, but Father Gordon explains the approval would have to come directly from the Vatican because the Perrin family are not members of the Catholic Church. The Warrens' daughter Judy is attacked in the Warren home by Bathsheba. The Perrin family takes refuge at a motel, but Carolyn takes Christine and April back to the house to kill them. Ed, Lorraine, and Brad find Carolyn in the cellar, trying to stab Christine. Lorraine warns if they take Carolyn outside the house, Bathsheba will kill her. They tie Carolyn to a chair, and Ed attempts the exorcism himself. Carolyn seemingly stops struggling, and for a brief moment it seems as if the exorcism was successful. Suddenly, a chair flips over end, and she's held upside down. Ed yells for the demon to put her down, and after a few tense moments, she is released onto the ground. Meanwhile, Drew finds April hiding under the floorboards in the kitchen. He yells down to the cellar that he found her, and this alerts the demon inside Carolyn, and she dashes up the cellar stairs to find April in order to complete the sacrifice. Ed and Lorraine Warren, along with Roger, rush up the stairs after her in order to stop her from going through with it. The possessed Carolyn chases after April through a tunnel underneath the floorboards. Carolyn grabs hold of April, but at the same time, Lorraine reaches down through the floorboards and grabs Carolyn's head. She tells Carolyn to remember how much her family mean to her, and to remember what she told her about how special they were to her and what they mean the world to her, and what she would leave behind if she ever went through with it. This seems to get through to Carolyn as her face relaxes and breathing returns to normal. The demonic presence in her eyes seems to fade, and she puts April down, allowing Ed to complete the exorcism and lift Bathsheba's curse and condemn her back to hell. Returning to his home, Ed adds the haunted music box from the Perrin home to their room of cursed artifacts that they have collected from past cases. As he leaves, the music box starts playing on its own. In 1971, demonologist Ed and Lorraine Warren bring possessed Annabelle doll to their home after claims from two nurses, Debbie and Camilla, that the doll often performed violent activities in their apartment. The doll summons spirits to attack Ed as they drive to their home, but he survives, and Annabelle is placed in a sacred glass case in the couple's artifacts room and blessed by Father Gordon to ensure her evil is contained.
1 year later, in 1972, the Warrens welcome Mary Allen, who is in charge of babysitting the couple's daughter Judy, to their home when they go overnight to investigate another case. At school, Judy sees the spirit of a priest that begins to follow her. After shopping at a friend's supermarket and talking to her crush Bob, Mary Allen starts to bake a cake for Judy's birthday. Her friend Daniela arrives uninvited to the Warrens' house.
Daniela, who is curious about speaking to the dead after the death of her father, gives a pair of roller skates to Judy as a birthday present and convinces her to play with Mary Allen outside. While they're away, Daniela tries to get into the artifacts room, but finds the room securely locked. Daniela finds the door's key in the Warrens' home office and starts exploring and touching artifacts, ultimately trying to contact her late father with an artifact called the Mourner's Bracelet.
She accidentally leaves Annabelle's glass case unlocked after hearing a knock that makes her think that her father is attempting to communicate. The terror begins shortly after with a knock at the front door, but no one is there. The spirit of B. Mullins interrupts Mary Allen.
That night, Annabelle begins releasing other spirits such as the ferryman, the bride, cursed samurai armor, a Feely Mealy board game, and a hellhound. After Bob arrives and asks Mary Allen out on a date, he is attacked by the hellhound and hides in the chicken coop in the Warrens' backyard. Mary Allen is attacked and dragged by the ferryman, while Judy is confronted by Annabelle in her bedroom.
When Daniela goes to return the artifacts room key, she becomes trapped inside the room and tormented by a toy monkey and an old television that can predict the near future. A future bloody and screaming Daniela appears on a television screen after having answered a cursed telephone. When the real Daniela reaches to answer the telephone, Judy and Mary Allen, who have escaped the spirits attacking them, rush in and prevent Daniela from doing so. The trio eventually escapes from the artifacts room after Annabelle terrorizes them again. Judy explains that they must lock Annabelle in her case so the other spirits will rest.
When they attempt to retrieve the doll, Daniela is attacked and possessed by the bride and starts attacking Mary Allen. Eventually, Mary Allen and Judy find the doll after the priest spirits acting as Judy's guardian, showing them the way. Daniela recovers when Judy plays Ed's recorded footage of the bride's exorcism and helps Mary Allen and Judy recover the doll. They manage to retrieve the glass case's key after they are attacked by the demonic hands from the Feely Mealy board game.
After the doll's case is locked, the disturbances stop and the other spirits return to their slumber. The trio is also reunited with Bob, who has survived the Hellhound's attack. The next morning, Ed and Lorraine return, and the trio tell them about their struggles. Eventually, Daniela apologizes to Lorraine, but Lorraine knows that her ill-advised actions were the result of wanting to contact her late father. Lorraine tells Daniela about a message she received from him, returning the picture of her father that Daniela inserted into the bracelet earlier. The two of them reunite with the others to join Judy's birthday party celebrations, along with Judy's friends.
In Mexico, 1673, two young boys present their mother with a pendant that she says she will cherish forever. She and her husband hold hands with their sons and dance until the youngest boy opens his eyes and sees that everyone is gone. He walks around calling for his mother and brother, only to find the woman drowning his brother in the river. The little boy runs, only to be grabbed by his mother and taken to the river as well. In Los Angeles, 1973, social worker Anna Tate Garcia and her kids Chris and Sam are getting ready for school, but they miss the bus. At work, Anna overhears her boss ask co-worker Donna to check on the home of Patricia Alvarez, a mother with two boys, Thomas and Carlos. Anna is their caseworker, and she hears that the boys have been missing from school. Anna convinces her boss to let her go and check on them since she knows them more personally. Anna goes to the Alvarez home with Officer Claro. Patricia tries to keep them from entering, but she's forced to let them in. Patricia mentions that she's been hearing the sound of a woman crying. Anna goes by a closet where she realizes the boys are being kept, but Patricia attacks Anna in an attempt to keep her from opening it. Claro pulls Patricia off Anna, and she opens the door to find Thomas and Carlos inside. They are brought to a nearby hospital where they have burn marks on their wrists. At home, Anna tries to spend time with her kids. She's a widow as her husband was killed in the line of duty and life's been hard for her. Later that night, Carlos is woken up by what sounds like a woman sobbing. He tries to wake up Thomas, but he doesn't hear. A guard checks in on them, and when he leaves, Thomas is out of his bed. Carlos follows him into the hallway. Thomas turns around and points at something in the mirror. When Carlos turns around, he sees tears dripping onto the floor before he looks up, and he is face to face with La Llorona. Anna is called by Detective Cooper to go by the hospital, leaving Chris and Sam in the car. Thomas and Carlos's bodies were found in the river. Patricia is there, wailing in despair and blaming Anna for causing her children's deaths, as she was trying to protect them from La Llorona. Meanwhile, Chris walks out of the car while Sam is asleep. He goes over to check on the scene until he hears the sound of La Llorona crying. She sees him and mutters in Spanish about her children and wanting to take him. She emerges from the shadows and grabs Chris's arms, burning him. She runs back to the car and wakes Sam up. He briefly sees La Llorona's reflection in the mirror before she starts trying to roll up the car windows, but Anna comes back in time. The next day, Anna walks by the Alvarez home and sees people engaging in some sort of ritualistic cleansing to ward off bad spirits. She meets Father Perez, who explains to Anna what is going on. She asks him about La Llorona, and Perez explains her backstory. She was considered the most beautiful woman in the village, and she met a rancher who rode into town and fell in love with her. They had 2 sons and lived happily until she caught him with a younger woman. In her rage, she sought to spite him by killing their sons. But after realizing what she had done, she was so consumed by grief and guilt that she drowned herself as well. Because she killed herself, she was barred from entering the afterlife. Sam walks outside the pool with her transparent umbrella as the wind blows. When she opens it, she catches glimpses of La Llorona. The wind blows the umbrella out of Sam's hands and lands in the pool. When she reaches for it, La Llorona appears and grabs her arm, burning her as well. Anna goes to talk to Patricia in person. She still angrily believes that Anna caused her boys' deaths. Patricia asks Anna if they had heard of La Llorona crying and if they felt the sting of her tears. She admits that she didn't pray to God for the salvation of her boys, but she prayed to La Llorona to take Anna's kids in exchange for her own. Cooper and Donna show up to Anna's house at night when they suspect something is up with the kids, especially with burns on their arms. The kids lie and say that they fell. After they leave, Anna goes to put the kids to bed. Later, Anna asks Chris about what's been happening. He tells her he heard La Llorona in Sam's room. Upstairs, Sam is taking a bath when La Llorona attempts to drown her. Anna and Chris hear the commotion and go up to save her. As they pull Sam out the tub, Llorona grabs Anna's arm and burns her too. Anna sees her horrible face with her bloody tears. Anna goes to the church to ask Perez for help. He says he did not believe in the supernatural until his run-in with Annabelle, but he knows of a former priest named Rafael Oliveira that can help. Anna brings the kids to Tuco's shop to ask them for help. Although he appears not interested, he agrees when Sam asks for his help. Raphael goes to their home and uses eggs to determine there is indeed a powerful entity haunting them. It would not matter where they go, as La Llorona would follow them. Raphael stays with the family at night as they try to find a way to keep Llorona out. He shows Anna that he collected Lloronavirus's tears to use as antivenom. She then appears and throws Anna against a wall before going after Chris and Sam. As Llorona pulls Chris out the door, Raphael grabs him and throws her own tears back at her to burn her and send her out the door. He then spreads seeds from a special tree across the doorway to prevent Llorona from re-entering. However, Chris points out that she will try to get in through the back door. As they run to the back, Sam realizes she left a doll outside. She tries to reach for it without stepping a foot outside the house and without breaking the seed line. As she pulls the doll back inside, the doll breaks the line and La Llorona pulls her outside. Anna realizes Llorona will try to drown Sam, so they run to the pool. She jumps in to get Sam, but La Llorona starts attacking her. Raphael then blesses the pool to turn the water holy and force La Llorona out. Anna emerges with Sam and La Llorona's pendant. A pounding sound is heard at the door. Patricia shows up with a gun, hellbent on delivering Anna's kids to the demon. Llorona reappears in the house, so Chris and Sam run to the attic. Their attempt to keep her out fails, and she makes her way upstairs. Chris pulls out the pendant that he took from his mother and shows it to La Llorona. For a brief moment, she appears as her former human self and approaches Chris and Sam. Sam then accidentally unveils a mirror, causing La Llorona to see her hideous demonic reflection and wail. Patricia has a change of heart and lets Anna and Raphael run up to the attic to fight La Llorona. Raphael attempts to hold her off with a cross, but she throws him back. Anna runs to protect her kids, and as La Llorona approaches, Raphael throws Anna the cross. She uses it to impale La Llorona through the chest, causing the evil spirit to finally be destroyed. In the morning, Raphael bids farewell to the family. As Chris and Sam run back into the house where they've just had significant trauma in, Anna turns around and sees what looks like a puddle of tears on the pavement. La Llorona. Amityville, Long Island, New York, 1975. Ed and Lorraine Warren are sitting with the Lutz family in the infamous Amityville home. A year earlier, Ronald DeFeo Jr. murdered his family with a shotgun, and the Lutz family claims to have been experiencing paranormal phenomena. The Warrens conduct a seance, in which Lorraine has a version where she sees herself in Ronald's position on the night of the murders.
She watches herself commit the acts, first with Ronald's parents and then his 3 siblings.
They are some very heavy sleepers!
Oh yeah. Lorraine then encounters a demonic creature taking the form of a nun, followed by a man dying. Lorraine screams and Ed pulls her out of the vision and comforts her. 3 years later, in Enfield, England, Janet lives with her older sister Margaret, younger brothers Johnny and Billy, and their mother Peggy.
The Hodgsons are struggling financially. The children's father left them for a neighbour woman, and Billy has a speech impediment that gets him bullied at school. Peggy has self-doubts as a single parent.
At night, Janet and Margaret are sleeping in their room when Janet begins to feel a disturbing presence.
England, that's where we live. It sounds as though she speaks to herself, but then she begins responding with a growling, raspy voice that claims, "This is my house!" Margaret thinks Janet is a bit of a goof and fooling around, until she stands by Margaret's bed and the voice of an older man behind Margaret repeating the statement. Margaret turns the lights on and finds nobody behind her. She decides to sleep with the light on. Back in the States, the Warrens are on a talk show to discuss the Amityville case. The other guest on the show dismisses the case as a hoax before criticizing Lorraine's supposed clairvoyance. This enrages Ed, leading him to arguing with the other man. Lorraine calms him down backstage. Janet and Billy play with the turntable based on the tune "There Was a Crooked Man." Billy walks around the house when he sees a toy fire truck on the floor. He rolls it into a tent in the hallway, but moments later, the truck rolls into Billy's room.
He goes back outside and rolls it into the tent, at which point a booming groan is heard.
That's the dickheadest jump scare ever. He just plays like, "No! Fuck off! Swat!"
Billy runs into his mother's room while Margaret hears a pounding at her door. She opens it and sees no one outside until Janet returns, denying that she was pounding on the door. The next day, Janet's watching TV and the channels start changing on their own. The remote has also vanished. Janet goes looking for it and finds it on the chair behind her. A ghostly figure emerges from the corner and growls,
"My house!"
Janet runs back to the couch screaming. That evening, Janet ends up on the floor of her room as though she was thrown. She tells Margaret that there is someone in the house. Before Margaret can dismiss this, their beds start shaking. They scream and run to Peggy's room. She goes to the girls' room thinking they are playing around, until the girls' dresser is shoved hard against their door.
The Hodgsons head over across the street to the home of the neighbours, the Nottinghams. Peggy calls the police to inspect their house. The police find nothing suspecting mice, but then they see a chair sliding across the room on its own, leaving them spooked, and with egg on their face, because it was never mice, At the Warrens' house, Ed's painting a pretty little picture of something he claims to have seen in a dream. It's the same demonic nun I dream about Scarlett Johansson. Well, you know, you do you.
You have nuns.
That Lorraine saw in her vision. Later, while she sits in the living room with her daughter, Judy, a noise is heard in the hallway. Judy goes outside to look. Lorraine finds her staring in horror at the demon nun. Lorraine follows her into the office. She thinks she sees the nun in the darkness, but it's just a painting. However, the demon is still in the room, and it walks up to the painting, makes it come to life. It growls as it runs toward Lorraine, causing her to see the same vision as before, only this time we see the man who dies. It's Ed, simply saying, "I'm sorry, Lorraine, delete my internet history," before a large wooden spike impales him. Lorraine starts screaming and scribbling into her Bible before Judy snaps her out of it. People in Enfield become aware of the Hodgson's haunting. Several paranormal researchers get involved, including Maurice Gross and Anita Gregory, the latter claiming there is lack of evidence to suggest that the phenomena is truly paranormal. Maurice and a news crew gather at the Hodgson's home to interview Janet and Margaret. During the interview, Janet looks uncomfortable as she has chronic wind, and she begins to speak with the voice of a raspy old man.
The entity says its name is Bill Wilkins, who was 72 years old and demands that everybody leaves his house. At the Nottingham's home, the children sleep in the living room. While everyone else is asleep, Billy walks through the house and encounters a creature that takes the form of the Crooked Man, reciting the nursery rhyme monstrously and chasing Billy. When he runs to tell his mum and the others, Janet emerges with the creepy voice saying the rhyme. She then lets out a horrifying sound that shatters the glass in the room. She passes out and starts foaming at the mouth. A priest goes to the Warrens' home and plays an audio recording of the interview for Ed and Lorraine to listen to. The priest asks them to help in this case. Lorraine is hesitant as she explains to Ed the vision that she saw of his death. Thinks it's a sign that maybe she is meant to prevent it. They decide to head over to England. The Warrens arrive in Enfield and meet the Hodgsons. Peggy shows Ed the bedroom that is now trashed and the walls covered in crosses.
Yeah, we're an hour into this thing. And
the Warrens
have only just made it to England. A flight delay must have been a bitch. They proceed to lock the room with a chain. Lorraine meets Janet outside her house, sitting on a swing set. Janet expresses her sadness that people are avoiding her over the supposed haunting. Lorraine comforts her in saying that maybe one person can help change things, like Ed has for her. Janet says the voice she hears says it wants to hurt Lorraine. The Warrens, along with Maurice and other crew members, gather in the Hodgsons' living room and try to communicate with the spirit. Janet sits in the chair and starts speaking in the voice of Bill Wilkins once the adults turn their backs to her. Ed pulls out his cross necklace and puts it in front of Janet's face, making Bill sound distressed. He yells something unintelligible before everything seems to calm down. The Warrens talk to other investigators with the evidence that they have. Anita is the most skeptic, thinking Janet is playing some kind of game. Ed also appears to have doubts himself. The Warrens stay with the Hodgsons for the night. Janet finds herself in the bedroom with the crosses. They all start to turn upside down before Janet is attacked by Bill's ghost. Her screams alert the adults, who rush to unlock the door to get Janet out. On another occasion, Peggy brings Ed downstairs to the basement to inspect her water problem that has left the basement flooded. Peggy thinks she sees someone behind Ed, but the ghostly vision of Bill in the water and grabs Peggy. Ed helps her break free. The children take a liking to the Warrens as they maintain their stay. After Peggy notes that her ex-husband took the music from the house, Ed buys an Elvis record for the kids to listen to. Unfortunately, really unfortunate in this scenario, the record player stopped working. Undeterred, Ed picks up a guitar, because he doesn't just fix sinks in this house, no, and starts playing Can't Help Falling in Love With You by Elvis Presley. He also convinces the kids, never let the bullies get them down, and they all joined a round circle and skipped. One of them wasn't true, but you're not really 100% sure which one now, are you?
Lorraine speaks with Maurice privately. He says that they're about to be part of history. Lorraine is uncertain about his comment, but he adds that he lost his daughter years ago, and he has been hoping to communicate with her in some way if it were possible. On another night, the kids hear noises coming from the kitchen. Johnny decides to investigate to fight this bully. Margaret then screams as Janet disappears. She pops up in the kitchen with a knife and the door lock. The adults try to get into the kitchen as things are being thrown around. They find chairs and dishware broken all over the kitchen, but Johnny and Janet are nowhere to be found. They eventually do find Johnny, and Janet is stuck inside an electrical box, speaking another unintelligible message before getting pulled out. Anita shows the Warren video evidence of Janet herself throwing things in the kitchen to give the appearance of a haunting, making it look more obvious that she was faking. Peggy sends everybody out of the house, later as the kids also believe Janet was faking. She tells them that it was going to hurt her family if she didn't do what she was told. The Warrens board the train to head home, even as Lorraine continues to express uncertainty on how it just appeared Janet was faking when a camera was pointed at her. Ed then plays the recordings of Bill's voice. When he realises they are connected, playing them together, the message comes out as, "Help me, it won't let me go."
Lorraine is then pulled into another vision. She sees the real Bill Wilkins sitting in his chair, no longer threatening. He speaks in a riddle to Lorraine before the demon nun appears behind Bill and takes him away. This leads Lorraine to realise that Bill is just a pawn, and this demon is a true threat. They rush back to the Hodgsons' home while trying to decipher the riddle. Ed figures that Bill meant to stay, so they need to find the demon's name in order to have power over it. The Warrens return to find the family locked outside the house in the pouring rain. Ed tries to break in through the back. Lightning strikes the tree in front of the house, leaving a sharpened stem that Lorraine recognizes as the thing that kills Ed in her vision. She tries to figure out the demon's name before realizing that she already does know it. She looks into her Bible and sees from her scribbling that she did in America, defaced a Bible, stuck it on a plane and flew a long way over to London.
Very convenient.
It is convenient. That's the one part of this film I don't like. Anyway, she looks into her Bible and she sees scribbling that the demon's name is Valak. She rushes into the house to go after Ed. Ed is partially blinded when a pipe bursts and sprays steam into his face. He stumbles and is attacked by the Crooked Man before coming across the room where Janet is.
She stands by the window as it shatters, leaving her an opening to jump onto the stem. Ed rushes to grab her, just catching her as he holds onto the curtains that are ripping.
They're like the world's strongest fucking curtains.
I have no idea how they stayed up.
That's a Dunelm special, that is, there. Like, holy hell. Tell you what, them curtains are so good, it's almost as if they're imaginary.
Lorraine reaches the room and tries to save Ed, but Valak emerges and holds Lorraine back. Lorraine utters the demon's name and commands it back to Hal. Lorraine runs to save Ed and Janet in the nick of time. Janet is just fine.
And again, I hate to be that guy, but that's two forms of double bullshit. Because you're telling me Lorraine dragged Ed
and Janet
up back through the window. I think somebody's playing a bit hard in truth with this based on a true story bullshit.
In the morning, everything has calmed down. Peggy and Janet thank the Warrens for their help. Brief text is followed that states that the Enfield haunting becomes one of the most notorious cases in history. Peggy Hodgson continues living in the house for 40 years until she died in the same chair as Bill Wilkins.
You'd have thought over 40 years he'd have bought a new chair.
Really?
I mean,
yeah,
I knew they were a bit tight on cash, but splash out a little bit.
For 40 years as well. The Warrens return home. Ed takes the Crooked Man turntable and puts it in his museum, right across from Annabelle.
In 1981, demonologists Ed and Lorraine Warren document the exorcism of an 8-year-old David Glatzel. Attended by his family, his sister Debbie and her boyfriend Arnie Johnson and father Gordon in the town of Brookfield, Connecticut. During the exorcism, Arnie invites the demon to enter his body instead of David's. Ed witnesses the demon transport itself from David's body to Arne's whilst he suffers from a heart attack, and he is then taken to a hospital in a comatose state. The following month, Ed wakes up at the hospital and reveals to Lorraine that he witnessed a demon enter Arne's body. She sends the police to the kennel and warns them that a tragedy will occur there. Arne and Debbie return to their apartment located above a kennel where Debbie works. After feeling unwell, Arne murders his landlord, Bruno Sauls, by stabbing him 22 times under the influence of a demonic possession. With the support of the Warrens, his case becomes the first American murder trial to claim demonic possession as a defense, resulting in the beginning of an investigation into David's original possession. The Warrens later discover a satanic curse passed on through a witch's totem and meet with Kastner, a former priest who previously dealt with the disciples of a ram cult. He tells them that the Oculus had intentionally left the totem, resulting in the creation of a curse on the Glatzels, causing the possession of David. The Warrens travel to Danvers, Massachusetts to investigate the death of Katie Lincoln, who was also stabbed 22 times. Detectives had found a totem at the home of Katie's friend Jessica, who was missing. Lorraine initiates a vision to recreate the murder and discovers that Jessica had stabbed Katie under the influence of demonic possession, before jumping to her death off a cliff, which allows detectives to recover her. The Warrens travel to a funeral home where her body rests, and Lorraine touches the hand of the corpse to help find the location of the occultists. Lorraine, in a vision, travels through a dark tunnel and witnesses the occultist attempting to have Arne killed himself, but stops her just in time. Lorraine is threatened by the occultist, and she tells Ed that the connection works both ways. The Warrens return to their house in Connecticut to investigate further. Ed briefly loses consciousness and was later influenced by the occultist into killing Lorraine, but was stopped by Drew in time. They later found the totem in their house, which was hidden inside a vase of black roses. Drew gives a book of Sterrigan witchcrafts he found to Ed and states that in the order for the curse to be lifted, the altar in which the occultist operates must be destroyed. When they realise Katie attended a nearby Fairfield University, they begin to assume the occultist is operating in the area. Lorraine returns to Kastner for help. He reveals that he had raised a daughter named Isla in violation of the requirements of the clerical stability of the Catholic Church. He tells Lorraine that during his research, her fascination for the occult grew, later becoming an occultist. Kastner gives Lorraine access to the tunnels where she locates the altar and is then found by the occultist, who then kills him. Ed soon arrives and finds his way into the tunnels through a locked drain hole with a sledgehammer. He is briefly possessed by the demon and attempts to kill Lorraine, but she retells him of the time they first met, reminding him of their love. Ed regains consciousness and destroys the altar, saving himself, Lorraine, and Arn. The occultist arrives at her broken altar, only to be killed by the demon she had summoned after failing to complete the curse. Ed places a cup from the altar in his room of artifacts, along with the Valak painting and the Annabelle doll. Arn is convicted of manslaughter, but ends up serving only 5 years of his sentence after marrying Debbie while in prison. Ed shows Lorraine a replica of the gazebo in which they first kissed.